Okay, good Friday morning, and welcome to another edition of the Urban Ecology Center's Backyard Naturalist. Happy June 13th, happy Friday the 13th. And because it is Friday the 13th, I thought we would inject just a bit of evil into today's episode, objectively evil. Um, for those of us, I think it's all of us right now watching from the United States, this is not an organism or group of organisms that we have to worry about. If you are tuning in from Eastern Australia, I didn't ask everybody where they were tuning in from this morning, but if you are tuning in from Eastern Australia, this is something you would want to beware. And I guess if you were tuning in, there's a lot of things you need to beware of from that part of the world. And if you're there, you already know about that. Everything in Australia pretty much wants to kill you. For those of us here in the Milwaukee area, this is just a reminder of how lucky we are not to have to worry about this particular group of species. We do have our own set of wildlife and plants that we do have to be careful about, but thankfully this is not one of them. So please sit back and relax in front of the warm glow of your device as we bring you episode 37 of season 6 of the Backyard Naturalist, The Stinging Tree. And this is not the stinging bee. This is not a giving tree. I guess it's a tree that gives a lot of pain. So it is a giving tree and a stinging tree. And per usual, I would like to give a huge thank you to all of you watching today from wherever you are, especially those of you who are subscribers who have helped us with the resources we need and the wonderful things that you bring to this program, the conversation, the smiles. We really, really appreciate you. And our next iteration of the Green Spaces Familiar Faces will be in a couple weeks, June 28th. Maybe I'm a familiar face by now, and I'm going to lead a hike through one of my absolute favorite places in Milwaukee County, a hidden gem, the Cudahy Woods. So I hope you can join me on that journey. And then finally, a little bit of a pivot. You know my go-to places for now for information. And this is a podcast that I have come to really appreciate. It's specific to trees. I think the hosts do a pretty good job. But the information that they share is really cool, and so I'm going to give them a shout out for this episode. And I do encourage you. It is a fun podcast. So okay, the stinging tree, and so there is, like I said, a lot less we have to worry about here in Milwaukee, right? And but we do have some plants that we do have to worry about. So I just got to do one of my favorite events of the year, which is walking through the park with Maddie and our other set of summer interns, a wonderful group. And, I was able to point out some of the things that we do need to be aware of in urban green spaces, besides human beings. And so we do have some plants to point out and some plants that are good to know. And we do have nettles. We have a couple of species of nettles. So on the left, you have the common stinging nettle, which is one of my favorite genus names, Urtica. So urtica is for the urticating hairs that are found throughout the plant. And when I learned the word urticating, I just try to use it as much as I can because it's just such a cool word. It means stinging or prickling sensation that you get from nettles. So nettles not only have their local lore and part of, medicines and foods, they actually have their own word for what they do to you, which is that they urticate you. They don't annoy you, they don't sting you, they urticate you. I mean, they could do all of those things. And I love that the word prickling is in the definition because, well, I've certainly been stung by the nettle, the stinging nettle, many, many, many times in my 2 decades plus years of working here at the Ecology Center. And at least for me, getting stung by a nettle isn't like, ouch, like when you get stung by a wasp. It isn't like this immediate, what? And I imagine people are affected differently. So maybe there's some out there that when you do touch the stinging nettle, you do have that reaction. But I particularly remember doing snake surveys in the floodplains along the Milwaukee River and pretty much walking through forests of stinging nettle, and on the days that I forget to wear pants, I mean wear shorts, forget to wear long pants, you get stings all over your legs, right? And so it wasn't like an awful thing. To me, it was kind of like this tingling sensation that in some weird way was kind of fun. And it went away probably in a half hour, 45 minutes. Um, and it's not like I'm going to seek it out, but I think, in my opinion, our stinging nettles are not horrible. Maybe if you tried to eat a raw leaf or use it for toilet paper or something, you might have some other experiences. But to me, the common nettle, the stinging nettle, is not too bad. On the other hand, the wood nettles, um, which we also have here, are a little more painful. So that's the one on the right. It's maybe they're worse because they're from Canada. They're the Canadian wood nettles, and we know how mean Canadians are. So um, it hurts. It's not a terrible hurt. It's not a pleasant sensation, and it does go away. So it is more of an ouch, but it does go away. And thankfully, both of these plants usually grow next to this plant, which is the jewelweed or the touch-me-not. Sorry. And the sap of the jewelweed has similar properties to like aloe. So if you do end up getting stung by one of these native nettles, you can often find the jewelweed right next to it and use the aloe like sap to soothe the pain of the nettle. And hopefully you have some water with you, because one of the coolest things you can ever do on a nature walk is to submerge a jewelweed leaf in water and see how it got its name. The tiny hairs trap air bubbles and just cause the leaf to glimmer like a jewel. And this picture doesn't do any justice. So if you ever have a chance, bring some water out and submerge a jewel, like just even if you have like one of those clear water bottles and you submerge a leaf, it is so cool. So you need to see that for yourself if you haven't. We also do have poison ivy to worry about here, and for this especially, people do react very differently to the toxin. So I know that I have received the oils of the poison ivy, and so far it hasn't hurt me or caused me to itch, or I haven't reacted yet. I do know that you can build up that you can kind of build up an, I don't know, maybe an anti-tolerance kind of, and it can affect you later, like once you reach a threshold. But it is a wonderful native plant, unlike the common nettle, and very important to insects, important to birds. And again, it can either not affect you, it can be annoying, it can be really bad for humans. So I don't want to negate the severity of what poison ivy can do. And especially one of the absolute worst things you can do with poison ivy is burn it, because then you turn the toxins into an aerosol, and if you inhale that can be deadly, and it has been deadly to people in the past. So we do have our share of more evilish plants. So wild parsnip gives us another one of my favorite botanical names for you, Carolyn Washburn. It gives you phytophotodermatitis. So phyto meaning leaf, photo meaning light, sunlight, and dermatitis, irritating to the skin. And so basically that long word basically means if you touch a leaf and the toxin gets on your skin, and then you expose the toxin on your skin to sunlight, that's when the chemical reaction occurs that can be really bad pain, and it's essentially a burn. It can be quite damaging and dangerous. I do know people that have had it, and it's not fun at all, and it can be really serious. So if you just touch the plant and then you're able to get the toxins off your skin, you should be fine. If you're out in the sun and you haven't touched the plant, you should be fine. But if you touch the plant and then expose that skin to sunlight, that's when the trouble occurs. And then finally, we do have a plant that is maybe worse than the stinging tree in some ways, because it is potentially deadly. I will say you probably won't die from the stinging tree. You may wish you were, but this is a potentially deadly plant here. It's called the water hemlock. It's not very common at all in the Milwaukee area, but if you do go north, like Cedarburg Bog area, they do have it. It's just bad news. A wonderful native plant, the parsnip, the wild parsnip is not native. This is a native plant, so it does have the ecological function. But you could touch the heck out of this plant. You could cuddle with it. You'd be totally fine, But if you, in your cuddling, ingest even a tiny part of it, get just a tiny part of it on your lips, that might be the last thing you do. Extremely deadly if eaten. There is a story out of the Cedarburg bog, a newspaper story from, I think, the 50s, where two kids were out and they decided to use the hollow stem of this plant as blow darts. And tragically, they both died. So we're not Australia, but we do have at least a couple plants to be aware of. But then it is really fun to just kind of look to Australia. I know a couple of you have been there before, but Australia is ridiculous. So home of the cone shell, beautiful, innocuous looking shell. You'd probably want to take it home for your collection, just gorgeous. But oftentimes there is something living in that shell, and there were cases people put it in their pockets. It has an injecting system of very toxic venom, and it has killed people. So that's the cone shell. We have done an episode on jellyfish, and one of the craziest things about the box jellyfish, in addition to being one of the most deadly jellyfish out there, is that it does have functioning eyes that produce image for an animal that doesn't have brains. That is ridiculously crazy. So it does have a system of seeing. Australia is also home to the stone crab. And again, this is something you could cuddle and touch. But if you ingested even a tiny, tiny part of it, that could, again, be the last thing you ever do. People have made like, like a seafood stew, and they just happen to get part of this stone crab in it. And I mean, talk about something that you think of, like what is the fugu fish that is like, could be deadly. This is something that you could kill an entire restaurant full of people if you got a little bit of the stone crab. So again, it's fine as long as you don't try to eat it. Like it could bite you, it could, get you in those pincers and hurt you, cause you to bleed. You'd be fine as long as you didn't ingest it. I don't have to say anything about these guys. That the picture speaks for itself here. Australia has some of the world's deadliest snakes. It has some of the world's deadliest spiders. Where going to an outhouse might be the last thing you ever do. I've been repeating that line quite a bit. And for us birders there, Australia even has a bird that can kill you, the cassowary. So it makes sense with this that Australia is also home to, I don't know if you call it the deadliest plant or the deadliest tree, certainly the most evil tree and possibly the most painful plant in the world. The version of the bullet ant being maybe the most painful animal that can inject you with venom. This might be the most painful tree that can inject you. And you do see, you see signs when you go to Australia about don't swim here, the crocodiles, beware, spiders, look in your toilet before you go, those kinds of things. And there are signs, quite a few signs saying beware of the stinging tree. And when you see it, it's like, that's kind of weird. And the first time I saw it is like, oh, I really wanted to know more. And I am fortunate enough to have interacted with the stinging tree. I can say that now because I think it's a good story. But I didn't think so at the time. So from a phylogenetic perspective, this is your basic plant, your basic vascular flowering angiosperm eudicot, pretty much where we start with all of the plants here, most of the plants here. It's in a very familiar group that we've gone to many, many times before, the rosid group, or Rosales. And like the nettle we featured in the past, it's got that great family name, Urticaceae, because it urticates you. That's all in the stinging nettle episode. But then we branch into new territory. So the genus is Dendrocnidae. Dendro for tree, and Nidae is for nettle. So essentially the translation is tree nettle in the genus. There's about 40 groups of species of Dendrocnidae. They're all woody, fast-growing, early successional species. They take advantage of disturbances in the forest. And there's two very important applications when you consider that these stinging trees are early successional species, right? So what that means is humans cause a lot of disturbances. The plants, the trees love those disturbances, and so they tend to grow there. They're along roadways, they're along paths, and then because we've caused the disturbance, we're probably going to be interacting with them more than you'd see. I've seen them, lining like forest pathways, like sometimes we get with that elm that's elm with the real prickers. I can't remember the name of it, but you see those lining the roadways and they kind of suck. It's easy to come across them. You see them along paths, along roadways, etc. The other thing from a human perspective is these are very fast growing woody trees. I mean, you're seeing early growth here, so you can't really see the wood, but it is a shrub. And the wood from a human perspective, from an anthropogenic perspective, is very poor quality. It rots very quickly. So there's not a lot of economic value in the tree from a timber perspective. And of the 40-ish species of stinging tree, I'm just going to focus on two today. So starting with Dendrocnidae moroides, which is commonly known as the stinging tree. Sometimes it's called the stinging bush, not the singing bush, but the stinging bush. Also known as Gympie gympie, spelled Gympie, which is the Australian Aboriginal name for the plant. So moroides means mulberry, and so from the Latin Western name, it is the mulberry stinging tree. And this species in particular on the evil scale is probably the evilest. It looks pretty ordinary, got that nice heart-shaped leaf. It does kind of look like a nettle, like, oh, maybe I don't want to touch it. It's got serrated edges. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the leaves are entire, so you got to be a little bit careful about that. The flowers are also pretty innocuous, but you can start to see some of those hairs. The fruits look like little blobs of jello. Again, tiny and inconspicuous. And here you can easily see how it got its name, the Latin name for the mulberry stinging tree, because the fruits look like little mulberries. I did not find information on how edible or delicious these are, or what, I get the feeling somebody knows, but I'm not sure if people would want to try. But again, so far so good. It's a pretty common, nothing, similar to a nettle, nothing terrible yet. But it is called the stinging tree. So if we take a look at those leaves again, they are armed to the tooth. And again, you've seen plants like this. They kind of look furry. Sometimes plants look like this and they feel velvety and soft and they're fine. And like the staghorn sumac, it's really fun to touch. It's very gentle, soft, fuzzy. But if you take a closer look at this, it doesn't look as friendly anymore. And there's a lot of crazy things, but one of the crazy things is that each of those needles, those hypodermic needles, is a single cell. It's a single cell that has elongated and gotten that structure through biomineralization. So as it's growing, it's like creating its own exoskeleton for the cell. So the plant is getting silica and carbon and phosphate from the soil. And then as the individual cells are growing, so in each of those prickers, there's a nucleus and all that other stuff. In each one of those, it's that silica and calcium is being added to it. So it becomes, silica is, it's glass essentially. And so it becomes glass-like, the calcium phosphate, calcium carbonate, and it becomes a glass-like stinging weapon. And technically this is a venomous plant. And again, if something is poisonous, you have to ingest it. If you bite it and you die, it's poisonous. If it bites you and you die, it's venomous, essentially, is one way I've heard that explained. So technically this is injecting you with venom when it bites. Trees don't bite, but you brush up against it and it feels like you're being bit. These these glass-like single cell, tiny needles. This is an electron microscope image, super tiny. Once this pierces your skin, it goes to work. It releases its trademark cocktail again of evil. So the cocktail includes histamines, right? We take antihistamines when we don't want to itch. So it's pretty easy to know that if it's giving you histamines, it's going to make you itch. I can tell you those histamines in this tree work very well. It also includes formic acid, which is kind of an irritant. Ants will use that for defense. But the key is it produces a couple of neurotoxins, which have cool names that are based on what we already know about the stinging tree. So the first group of neurotoxins are called gympiogides, from the Aboriginal name Gympie Gympie. The second group of neurotoxins are called moriatides, with that mulberry name for the species of the plant. So the toxins in this plant are unique enough that it has given the name to its own neurotoxin group. When they're injected, they essentially, now I'm going into areas above my pay grade, but they essentially latch onto your pain detecting cells and make them go haywire. And a physician described it as locking the afflicted area into the molecular equivalent of an infinite scream of pain. So you can imagine that. It's, you turning that pain receptor on and leaving it on, like if it were a fire hose. If that's not enough, it's also injecting you with acetylcholine, which by itself isn't bad, but acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter. So now you have the two working together, disrupting sodium channels, causing extreme pain. The neurotransmitter is making sure that pain is being spread. And the result is, if I hadn't said it enough already, extreme pain. It is kind of fun in a weird way to like look at the accounts of how people have described the pain. And, people will put it under the guise of like once stung, never forgotten, the title. And people have described it as being stung by 30 wasps simultaneously and repeatedly. Someone described it as grabbing a hot coal and holding onto it. Someone described it as driving a nail into my flesh. And you can look these up if you want to go down a fun rabbit hole of pain, to see how people describe this. It is an extreme pain, and then to make the matter worse, it's not a pain that goes away. It's lasting pain. So if you look at the anatomy of a stinger, pretty straightforward surface of the leaf. But the key evil point is that bulb at the end. So some refer to it as kind of more like a crochet hook because it gets into your skin and stays. But really what makes it bad is that there's a natural breakage point on the bulb. So like when you cook asparagus, right, and you kind of bend it to see where the natural breaking point is, and you cook the smaller part. This also has a natural breaking point. So as soon as that needle enters your body, the bulb breaks off. And once it's in there, again, this is tiny, that's it, right? It is possible to remove some of the main needles, like you can remove a bee stinger. But even you're not going to get them all. And then that little bulb on all of them is going to break off and remain in your skin and stay there for a long time. It takes a long time for that bulb to break down. And this means that it is a long-lasting pain. So for me, as an undergraduate, I was fortunate to be able to work in Australia. We had been aptly warned about the stinging tree. It was pointed out to us by a naturalist. And when I saw it for the first time, I'd already seen that sign. And I don't know, there's some human, at least for some humans, this urge to like, I know that if I do this, it'll be painful, but like, how painful will it be? And I had this like, I just kind of want to touch it to see what we're talking about in terms of pain. Then the naturalist started telling us stories about, death, right? Like with the histamine, some people will react like they do bee stings, and it can kill you, just like a bee sting can kill you. Why people carry around EpiPen. So I think at some point my cerebral cortex took over and said, let's not touch it. So I didn't. And then later in the trip, I was doing some field work and I came across another plant that we had also been warned about. And this plant is called the wait-a-while plant, which to me looks way worse, right, than the stinging tree. If like I had to pick two, I'd pick between the two. I'd be like, I'm going to go for the stinging tree. This is called the wait-a-while because if you run into it, you have to wait a while because you have to extract yourself and your clothing from those super sharp and scary looking thorned barbs. So to my misfortune, as I was flagging the research area, I saw wait a while. That was directly ahead of my compass bearing. So I thought, okay, like the story, I can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go through it. I'll have to go around it. I do with my eyes laser focused on this wait a while because I really don't want to get attacked by this thing. Then suddenly out of nowhere, I get this searing pain in my leg. The 30 wasps, the hot coal, that was extremely apt for the pain that I felt in the moment. I do have to say that I am kind of a wuss when it comes to pain and colds and things like this. So I don't know, take that as you will, but it was really, really painful. And then I realized that I had in fact encountered the stinging tree because it had brushed up against my leg. And kind of in my shock at how painful that actually was, I jumped away from it as a reaction and then had the wonderful fortune of landing in an entirely different patch of these plants. So I'm getting it all over my legs now. I'm wearing shorts again, yeah, why? So my brain immediately goes back to that warning from the naturalist. It's like in the cartoons, people have died, people have died. So I'm experiencing this level of pain I've never experienced ever. Now I'm thinking I got to get back to the research station, but I can only get there using a compass. And I also feel like I'm going to pass out from the pain. I finally get there. I come across my advisor. My advisor looks a little concerned. He sees like this tear in my face and asks me what happened. And I told him what happened. And then his look of concern kind of, I think, changed to a little bit of a smirk, a little bit of a smile. He's like, oh, yeah, I know what you're in for. And he said, you haven't died by now. You probably are not going to die. So really what was ahead of me was the pain. It's starting out with about 48 hours of straight up pain. So they took, I guess, the age-old remedy of duct tape first, and he just, did like put the tape on my legs and ripped it off like a Band-Aid style. The goal was to get some of those needles out. It's not going to get those little bulbs at the end, but at least it'll get some of the needles out. Another staff member went over to whatever the Australian equivalent of Walgreens is and got a leg waxing kit for me. And then I had the pleasure of going through my first leg waxing. And it's not like I would imagine leg waxing where you have like the pain, but then it's relief, because the waxing pain was replaced by the tree toxin pain. And I did end up going to the clinic, and really all they could do was prescribe some pain relief. But if there was pain relief, I didn't notice it. I didn't sleep for the next 2 evenings straight, and not because I wasn't tired. I was super tired. But the moment I started to fall asleep, the pain in my legs like just wrenched me back awake. It was nonstop. It was unbearable, and it was 2 days straight. Finally, the third night, I was able to sleep. And I would say for the next 3 weeks, the pain did start to subside. And sometimes when it did, it was this like cruel replacing of extreme pain with extreme itching. But if I scratched my legs, it was like this immense duality of pleasure and pain. Like pleasure, yes, I am relieving that itch that is killing me, and pain because I'm also now jostling all these needles and releasing more toxins. So about a week later, it became a little more bearable. And then I went swimming. And as soon as my legs hit the cold water, the pores of my skin contracted around the needles, and I got another like sharp dose of pain that caused me to run out of the water and like, what the heck's going on? And that was the plant reminding me that it still had control of me. Like I still had a lot of venom left for you. So again, finally it became bearable. And then 2 months later, I step out of the airport at Minneapolis, and I hit the frigid Minneapolis winter. And then I got another like jolt of pain, because now my skin is contracting around these needles that were, maybe less, they were there, they were just kind of waiting. And then I got more toxins released, and the jolts of pain continued, and they continued to subside, right? But I felt the presence of that plant for over a year, but thankfully it became duller and duller. So I think Once Stung, Never Forgotten is great. It's like a story. It's a chapter of my life. It's easy for me to believe the stories of, like, there was a military personnel who got it worse than I did and was strapped to a gurney for 3 weeks. Um, there is a story of someone who they say used it as toilet paper and committed suicide. As terrible as that is, I don't believe it, because I think it is. I mean, it's probably an urban legend. There's because unless they were wearing like welding gloves, they would have been stung on the hand before they used it for hygienic reasons. So I think that's just more of a like campfire story. Who knows? But these trichomes, these teeny tiny trichomes, they just basically destroy you once they enter your body. And at the same time, like poison ivy, this is a natural part of the ecosystem. So they don't destroy everything. Um, the destruction is geared towards mammals. They don't affect birds. You can see from this picture, they don't affect insects. So there's beetles that love to eat the leaves of the stinging tree. And there is at least one mammal, and I just got to show you because it's adorable, that has figured out how to not be destroyed by the stinging tree. So this is the red-legged pademelon, nice marsupial. And I think it just has to do with the thickness of their lips and whatever else that the toxins just don't, or maybe they have a natural anti-toxin or whatever. But I just imagine somebody like looking at this and thinking, what the heck is wrong with this guy? So my unfolding story, I can just imagine one of these like in the forest, just kind of looking at me, watching me. So the plant's not so bad. It's tasty, but like I said, I'm kind of a wimp, and I do want to mention there's another species of stinging tree worth mentioning, only if only because of its name. So this is the giant stinging tree. It's the same genus. It's a straight up stinging tree. It can make your life miserable. It can grow over 100 feet tall. It's a canopy, big giant, complete with buttresses. So aptly named, but it is still an early successional species. So this is like, for you botany nerds, this is more equivalent to like our birches and alders. It grows very fast despite its size, and it dies fast. It's a short-lived species. The wood is very poor quality, so the lumber from this huge tree would never be used. It's just, once this dies, it decomposes, falls over, decomposes very quickly. So you'd think it'd be more imposing than the regular tree, but from a human perspective, it's supposedly not quite as bad. I have no longer have the urge to compare this with the one I encountered. I don't know, maybe a little. It's been 20 years. But that is the story of the stinging tree, the bane of my existence for at least a little while. So reflecting on it was kind of cool, like reflecting on the botfly I was able to raise in my forehead, but just without the crap ton of pain involved. And anybody that's been in the field or anywhere in life has stories like this. But just as a field biologist, I think the you tend to get more, at least from the natural side of things. So thank you for joining. I will stop sharing my screen now.